Cup of Tea by Catherine Mansfield is the story prescribed in your syllabus. We have discussed the story in detail, and today we will read the story for a better experience of the writer's intentions. I begin. Rosemary Fell was not exactly beautiful. No, you couldn't have called her beautiful. Pretty? Well, if you took her to pieces. But why be so cruel as to take anyone to pieces? She was young, brilliant, extremely modern, exquisitely well dressed, amazingly well read in the newest of the new books, and her parties were the most delicious mixture of the really important people and artists, quaint creatures, discoveries of hers, some of them too terrifying for words, but others quite presentable and amusing. Rosemary had been married 2 years. She had a duck of a boy. No, not Peter Michael. And her husband absolutely adored her. They were rich, really rich. Not just comfortably well off, which is odious and stuffy and sounds like one's grandparents. But if Rosemary wanted to shop, she would go to Paris as you and I would go to Bond Street. If she wanted to buy flowers, the car pulled up at that perfect shop in Regent Street, and Rosemary inside the shop just gazed in her dazzled, rather exotic way and said, I want those and those and those. Give me 4 bunches of those. And that jar of roses. Yes, I'll have all the roses in the jar. No, no, lilac. I hate lilac. It's got no shape. The attendant bowed and put the lilac out of sight, as though this was only too true. Lilac was dreadfully shapeless. Give me those standby little tulips, those red and white ones. And she was followed to the car by a thin shop girl staggering under an immense white paper armful that looked like a baby in long clothes. One winter afternoon she had been buying something in a little antique shop in Curzon Street. It was a shop she liked. For one thing, one usually had it to oneself, and then the man who kept it was ridiculously fond of serving her. He beamed whenever she came in. He clasped his hands. He was so gratified he could scarcely speak. Flattery, of course. All the same, there was something. You see, madam, he would explain in his low, respectful tones. Love my things? I would rather not part with them than sell them to someone who does not appreciate them, who has not that fine feeling which is so rare. And breathing deeply, he unrolled a tiny square of blue velvet and pressed it on the glass counter with his pale fingertips. Today it was a little box. He had been keeping it for her. He had shown it to nobody as yet. An exquisite little enamel box with a glaze so fine it looked as though it had been baked in cream. On the lid, a minute creature stood under a flowery tree, and a more minute creature still had her arms around his neck. Her hat, really no bigger than a geranium petal, hung from a branch. It had green ribbons, and there was a pink cloud like a watchful cherub floating above their heads. Rosemary took her hands out of her long gloves. She always took off her gloves to examine such things. Yes, she liked it very much. She loved it. It was a great duck. She must have it. And turning the creamy box, opening and shutting it, she couldn't help noticing how charming her hands were against the blue velvet. The shopman, in some dim cavern of his mind, may have dared to think so too. for he took a pencil, leant over the counter, and his pale, bloodless fingers crept timidly towards those rosy, flashy ones as he murmured gently, "If I may venture to point out, madam, the flowers on little lady's bodice." Charming! Rosemary admired the flowers, but what was the price? For a moment the shopman did not seem to hear. Then a murmur reached, 28 guineas, madam. Now, so far, what I have read out to you, I will give you four small questions as homework to answer. First of all, what opinion, what opening opinion do you get about Rosemary Fell as a person? Number two, where would she like, where did she like to go out shopping and why? Now, on her first visit to the shop in the short story, what she desires to buy, and is Rosemary fond of flowers? If yes, what are the flowers which she buys from the flower shop?